Good morning. Good morning. Happy Mommy Mondays. Kia here. Super pumped, super excited. I first and foremost want to just thank everybody for chiming in for the month of mothers. The response, the feedback has been phenomenal. I'm just really overwhelmed with joy. This is what community is about. It's something about connecting with one another and seeing different vantage points, highlighting different things that really help us as moms and just help us women and people as in general. And so, if this is your first time joining us for Month of Mothers, this is all about getting perspective, busting out of our bubble, our personal bubble, our bubble of the United States where I currently live and I'm from, to examine other women's stories, to look at other people's perspective and vantage points in order to discern, is this the reality of motherhood or is this part of my culture that's impacting my motherhood? And I think that's so important for us to know because many of us find ourselves overwhelmed, stressed out, wanting to ask for help, but not really knowing what's fair, not really knowing what's reasonable support or a reasonable request. And so, as we've journeyed through around the world, now we're ending up in Ireland. And this one is really near and dear to my heart because we'll be talking with Jacqueline, who I went to school with in high school. Military brat, was raised predominantly overseas in Germany. And so we were in high school together. And so to connect with her again has been very special because she's doing what I desire to do. She is raising her children overseas as we were raised overseas. And so if you're tuning in, this is a great conversation to chime in. We want to hear from you. Put in the comments your thoughts, your questions, because for many of us, we get to look through someone's eyes for a moment to see what it'll be like to raise our children, to have children, be married, homeschooling, doing all the things, but in another country and seeing what that looks like. So, without further ado, I introduce to you Jacqueline.
Hello.
Hi, beautiful.
Thanks for having me. I was so
Of
excited.
course. Thank you for saying yes. When I was just praying about this whole project, it's like, Lord, who would you have me to highlight? And you like came to forefront of my mind. Because not only were you raised like I was raised, the
Oh yeah.
weirdos and no,
Everybody thinks we're weird, aren't we?
exactly, or not psychotic or, whatever. But it's kind of like there's a different mindset that you get from living overseas, being raised overseas. And then you took it a step further and went back and now
Oh
raising
yeah.
your family. So let's start first with tell the people about you, your story. And I even personally want to know how and why did you end up back over in Europe?
In, well, after graduation, we moved to the States, but while we moved to the States, I applied to university in England because I knew I wanted to stay more in Europe. And anyway, universities were cheaper in Europe than they were in
Really?
the States. And I didn't want a huge student loan and all of that on my back. So England back then, it was for a year, £1,200, which was about $1,500 per year versus, lots and lots and lots. So that was one.
Hold on. I need that to sink in for a minute. You
It
said it was 1,500 a year?
Yes, it helped because I lived, we were lived in Germany, so they asked how long have you lived in Europe. They counted that in, and so I qualified for all the European benefits back then. Prices now have changed in the UK to being a bit more not so friendly anymore, but yeah, for me back then it was easier. And to be fair, even the websites were easier to navigate for the whole finding your courses, how much it is, and everything than what I found the universities in the States that I looked at. So that
So
was another benefit.
hey, there's no way, even from back then, there's no way it jumped from $1,500 a year to 40,000, 50,000.
It's still not that much. It's about £12,000, so about $15,000 probably around now. But
Girl,
that's,
that's
I think,
private
still if
school.
you're from Europe. I don't know how much it is for non-EU background,
Uh-huh.
but still not as much as what you have in America.
No. Oh my gosh. Okay, continue. I'm sorry. That just
Yep.
blew
No, you're you're fine. So after then, I graduated with a bachelor's degree. I had a job offer for the store that I used to work in, but they didn't pay enough to actually live close to London. So I moved back to the States, stayed there for a while, worked in a school for a bit, and then I'm like, nah, I don't like it. In the meantime, my brother was in Aberdeen, Scotland. So, and he didn't feed himself properly. And, big sister's like, no, I need to go over there and take care of my little baby
Yeah,
brother.
yeah.
Move over there. I got there 2 days later. He moved back to the States. I was still in Aberdeen.
Oh
So I
my
was there for about 4 years. In the meantime, met my husband. We had Victoria then. And that's pretty much where we knew Europe is the thing. Then, like a lot of relationships, you kind of need some time off. So Victoria and I moved to my parents back to the States. We worked there, worked full time, worked lots of hours to be able to sponsor my husband's visa to come over.
God. Hmm.
He was over there. We all lived in my parents' house because even though I was earning what one thinks or sounds in Europe as a good pay, it wasn't really getting us anywhere over there.
Yeah.
So eventually we decided we're going to move back. But in the meantime, in the same time, my parents are like calling me up, hey, we're sell the house. We're moving to Ireland. Um, so I'm like, oh my God, me selling my parents' house. How do I do it? But it all
Oh.
worked out.
So wait, okay. So where's your husband from?
Bulgaria.
Bulgaria. And you guys met in England,
In Scotland, yes.
in Scotland. Okay, that's
Yep.
right. You went to see your brother. Y'all hooked up. And then you went back to the States. Why did you move back to the States? Because you were thinking in your mind that it'd still be a better living?
My parents were there.
Okay,
So
so let's get back home. Okay.
yeah, it just was easier with the little one and just having the parental support
Yeah, your
and
village.
dad being then the babysitter while I could work full time to get us kind of a life sorted.
Got you. And so then you worked, and you're like, this is for the birds. This is not work. Let's go back overseas.
I put in like 60 hours a week plus at times, had no days off. And what really got to me is, paid vacation. Those that 1 month that you get here in Europe, that doesn't really exist in the States. They looked at me like, you can take your 1 day off a week, kind of. And I'm like, yeah, that doesn't, no, that's not how it goes with me. So that doesn't go down very happily.
I see it now because you guys, when we call it overseas, and if correct me if I'm wrong, but I remember when we were growing up, it was called holiday. I'm
Yeah,
on holiday.
holiday.
And so this is not like a day or two you can get. It's typically a month, and your whole family is off,
Yep,
and
you
you
can. Yeah, you can spread it out. Sometimes you can take the whole 4 weeks off at once, but if you want to split it up, you take a week here, a week there, and then you just have a nice vacation time throughout the whole year. And it's a legal requirement that you get at
travel.
least a month off through the year, paid vacation.
That part. That's one thing that we're definitely missing here in the States because, so many families are screaming out work life
Yeah,
balance. And they even highlight that on jobs. And then you go and try to go for that work life balance. And it's like it doesn't
doesn't work.
happen, or
Yeah.
this is not the right time, or whatever the case may be. And so, legally, for it to be a thing, it's really important.
Oh, definitely. 'Cause I know my husband, he worked for a car sales company, and if he didn't sell a car the day before his day off, he wasn't allowed to take his day off. So we're like, yeah, this is, and then all our money went to insurance, daycare, and everything, and it just wasn't our lifestyle.
Yeah, yeah, I get it. And for anybody listening, I pray that it's an encouragement to you, not as a form of complaining, but if you feel overwhelmed and you feel a lot of pressure, like know that it's a thing. Like it is a lot and it is hard to try to find that
Balance,
balance,
yeah.
right? And I think a lot of moms sometimes we feel guilty, especially if we're working moms, even sometimes stay-at-home moms. It's like, man, am I doing enough?
Oh, definitely. I mean, I'm a stay-at-home mom, and at the same time, I'm like, is this enough? Is there what else can I do? And then I'm overwhelmed at the same time, and because you don't get any more your time, there's no more mom time. There's only mama, 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 and then husband comes home and he wants you too. And I mean, and when is there me time?
Girl. That's the whole reason how Mommy Mondays even started.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I personally have been losing my mind sometimes, because if society is telling you that success looks this way and a good mom looks this way,
Mhm.
but then you have all these things pulling on you, and then what you're told is find the balance. It's like, what?
Where's the balance? What is the balance?
What is one's balance, you know?
Exactly.
Exactly. And so I love this because, by connecting with other moms, you can kind of see, okay, yes, money is important.
Of
Even
course.
yes, education is important. But I have the advantage of making my life the way I want it to be, or we want it to be as a family. Even
Mhm.
if I don't see someone else doing it just like this, even if people are going to call me crazy, even if I'm scared, I can
Of
do
course.
it.
I
So
mean, as
then,
long as you're happy, your husband and your kids are happy, that's all that matters. Who cares what the outside world thinks? And
exactly,
we
exactly.
just
So
need to remember that.
yeah, you got to keep kind of telling yourself that, like,
Yeah,
okay, because I don't need to be a size zero anymore. I don't need to, go back. I don't need a snatch back. I don't need to,
exactly.
have the smartest kid on honor roll every single time. You know what I mean? Like,
Yep.
or do all the sports. And so, were you scared when you decided to like move your whole family?
Well, for us, the biggest move was back to Ireland, and it
Okay,
was daunting, but because we had mom, dad, my brothers, my nephew,
the
my
whole
kids,
family, y'all.
yes, my husband was back in Scotland for the meantime working. We
Hmm.
were all together in one little house, and that was honestly the best time for our family. We were in a four-bedroom house. It was technically a three-bedroom house, but we made it a four-bedroom house, so we canceled out the living room.
Uh-huh.
Everything was in the dining room, living, kitchen area. Everything was squished into one room. It was eight of us back then in one tiny little house, but it worked. We had the best
It
time of our
works.
life. The first house was close to the ocean. It was
Uh-huh.
one of those, traditional cottages you see on TV for Ireland or the UK. So it was our dream house. We only had it for 6 months, but for those 6 months, we kind of had my mom and I have this dream of the cottage lifestyle with the flowers outside, an apple tree,
And your
blackberries growing on the
garden.
bushes. We had it. It was the best. So that helped a lot. Then the crisis houses started getting rarer over here. So,
Mhm.
and we had to move. So my parents started being a bit scared about, oh, did they do the right thing? So they
Mhm.
found another house, great house. So we all moved to that house. And then just up the road from that house was another house available, which is now our house. So it
Okay.
seemed to have worked all in our favor. And currently, hopefully, still, we want to buy a house in the next few months, hopefully. So we're praying that it stays our luck.
Yes. And tell the people how much you pay for your house.
We're paying right now for it's a three-bedroom house, two bathrooms, and well, the kitchen is this big, but it works. We're paying 550 euros, which is with the current exchange rate almost the same basic $550 more or less. We have a nice garden, sheds. We have a good sized property, but we're very lucky as well. Very, very lucky. And we got it 4 years ago. If we would get it now, we'd probably be paying 1,200 as well, 1,300. So
Okay.
we're not arguing with anything. We'll take whatever happens.
What you
Exactly.
need? Yes,
What
landlord.
happens? Exactly. And we have cows. Our landlords have cows, so they're just in the backfield. So we go and cuddle them if they wanted. And it's great. We have the country life.
Oh my. And do you guys get fresh milk?
We do from one of the farmers that are friends with my parents. Fresh milk, we make cheese, and all the other stuff that we enjoy.
Girl, you make me want to cry right now because I remember that as a kid.
Hmm.
And I remember when we moved back to the States, like I became lactose intolerant.
Yes, my mom had the same problem.
Which is interesting because if you're getting fresh from the cow, like my whole like from 3rd grade to high school, I never had any issues with dairy
Yep.
until I moved to the States. And so then I'm kind of like, okay, that was interesting. And then the eggs, for example, everybody's talking about, the shortage of eggs and the expense
Yeah,
overseas. People had eggs, or you get it from your neighbor, for people from your town.
exactly. Yeah,
Hey, and you didn't even have to refrigerate them. So I'm like, what
yeah,
kind of eggs were over there that these eggs we got to refrigerate? Like,
yep. No, um, no. My mom had the same thing with the dairy here. Even the store bought dairy is doesn't do her any harm. Whereas in the States, all sorts of dairy gave her issues. And I think the raw milk, they call it raw milk over here,
mhm.
it has still all the nutrients in it that protect your stomach from it. But you have to make sure that you get it from a safe location.
Yeah, and that's the key right there. But like, do you guys? Because I don't remember this. For example, here in the States, that everything is organic. If you want the best food, it needs to be organic, and it needs to be farm raised, and it needs to be, straight from the farmer to your house to your
Yeah.
table. Is there anything like that in Europe? Is there an organic section?
They have an organic section and it's expensive like everywhere else. But
Hmm.
also, if you listen to news, and especially the Germans, they like to talk about all of this stuff. They say not all organic is actually organic because there's so much in the air that you can't prevent from coming down onto what you're buying.
Hmm.
So organic is not necessarily organic, and even the farms cheat. They say they're organic, yet they're actually not organic. The
No.
only way you know you're organic is if you grow it yourself.
Yes, or if it's the people in the town, like you could walk by. Okay,
Exactly. You
you
know
said
the
that.
person, you know, yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and we don't get that here in the States. Oh, here we go. Amy said they're adding things to the milk here, so it's not really lactose intolerant. It's something else intolerant. Yeah, Amy, I
That's a
don't.
good point.
Yeah, so the other thing that I noticed too is I never had an allergy, because even when we're talking about organic,
Mhm.
I never had an allergy to fruits and vegetables overseas as a kid.
Yep.
But now I have this thing called, like, I'm allergic to pesticides. And so literally
Okay.
my face will break out,
Oh no.
um, and then my throat will itch, and it's just, so I'm finding all these things now that I'm allergic to that wasn't even a thing.
Yeah. It's still a big thing. I mean, like I said, my mom, I've been lucky. I've never really had much allergy issues until I got pregnant with Sophia 2 years ago, and
Mhm.
life just went downhill. But I'm finally over it. Took 2 years to get over it, but we're good now. But my mom,
Yes.
she everything in the States went downhill for her when it came to fruit. She never had a strawberry allergy. In the States, she broke out eating strawberries, the milk, eggs, everything got to her. Over here, she finally is settling down and can eat again, everything.
And look, and then the other thing is too, people are saying they're eating, doing sugar, doing all the things, drinking soda over in Europe and not gaining weight. Some people lose weight. And then here in the States, I'm telling you, it's something going on with the food. And I don't mean this to, again, bash America or make anybody feel bad, but it's something as moms and parents in general, we need to be aware
Yeah.
of. Be
I
aware.
mean, the whole overweight thing is growing over here too. So it's not just alone America which has the overweight thing.
No, no, I
Um,
get it.
but they reduce, like, all the sodas now have a limit on how much sugar can be in it. They do use more of, that I call it the fake sugar, the sucralose and all of that, and I disagree with it because in my opinion the more chemicals you put in your body, the more harm you're doing to it as well. So if you want something, have it with the proper sugar, but
Mhm.
reduce, don't go crazy with it, just have it in little amounts and enjoy it, because you know what sugar does to you, but you don't know what those chemicals eventually will do to you.
Yeah.
And that's what they're really trying to reduce, and it's hard to find actually juices or, those, they call it cordials here, the syrups that you mix with the water, that
Mhm.
actually don't have fake sugar in it. I still have to go to a Polish shop here and find what I need, because I don't want my kids to have all those chemicals. If they want a juice, I want them to have the natural fruit juice, the natural fruit sugar, and not that reduced and then added fake stuff to it. I just don't believe in that.
Yeah, no, it's weird. And they do the same thing in our bread. Like, I found out here
Yeah.
recently, um, they're stripping the wheat down to pretty much just the carb and the sugar.
Okay.
And we're not, if you wanted to get real wheat, like grain, like whole grain, we're
Yeah.
not gonna really find it in our store. We have to actually like order grains and make it ourselves because
Oh
they're
wow.
reducing even the nutrients in grains.
Is there a specific reason behind it, or
Well, you know it's
that's
money.
yeah, that's shocking. No, our bread here is still surprisingly good. A lot of things tasted differently for us because we were used to the American food.
Yeah.
And then we came over here and we're like, this tastes weird. Or the beef, because beef here, all beef is, what is it? What do they call it? Free range, free outside. All our cows are outside all year round, except for when the winter comes and it's really bad. So instead of tearing up the fields, they have to take the cows in for a month or two. But
Uh-huh.
otherwise, I mean, there are no locked up cows here. That's we just it doesn't exist here. Yes, unfortunately, with chickens, that happens. Pork, I don't even want to think about what they do with the pork.
Yeah.
But I know my beef, at least, I see it because the cows that we have in the backfield are beef cattle. So those will eventually, if they're not good for reproducing, they're going to be slaughtered at some point.
Be on your table.
Exactly. But at least I know I have an idea of where my beef comes from. It might not be those, but it'll be one of the few that are here, or lots that are here.
That's I was cracking up when you were saying that because like when I think of the labels on our food for it to say grass fed, like for the first time you made me think like, what are they eating if they're not eating grass fed? And why do I have to pay extra for them to be grass fed to eat what they're
For
supposed
what they're supposed to be doing. Yeah.
to? Girl,
They have
that's
a whole
interesting.
bunch of add-ons. I mean, our cows here get vitamins added to them as well because they just need. I mean, like humans, we need vitamins, and the grass doesn't have enough for them as well.
Mhm.
But otherwise, they don't get anything else really. They eat grass all year round. Yeah. And the beef tasted so weird for us. We're like, this is clean beef. This is so awkward. We're kind of getting used to it now. It's still hard, especially if you want a proper like beef roast or something like that. Or going to
Yeah.
McDonald's. The beef burgers, they taste too healthy for being McDonald's. If you
That
go to
part.
McDonald's, you want that fast food, junk food taste.
That part. I don't remember like when I was growing up, we went to McDonald's like maybe once a week, like after sports and stuff like that, and it wasn't a
Yeah.
big deal. Like you guys, the McDonald's in Europe, it's clean.
Oh yeah.
The bathrooms are clean. Like you don't feel that we call it itis, but that sluggish feeling. Like I don't remember that as a kid, and it
No.
could be some part of my brain is fantasizing it. But even when we travel to Europe now, I don't feel as guilty feeding myself and my children McDonald's
Yeah.
than I do here in the States or even Wendy's and things of that nature. And so it's very interesting in that. And it's even more interesting when you know both sides of it. Because if you're in the States,
Definitely.
you
Yeah.
think everything's all good, Europe's weird. And then when Europe is like, American food is trash.
Exactly. Yeah, it is. I mean, there is good sides on both sides, but at least we can talk about it because we know a little bit of both sides. And
Mhm.
I do miss, oh, don't get me wrong, I do miss some of the junk food America has to offer, because if you want junk food, you want proper junk food. You don't
Yeah,
want
like
that healthy taste with your junk food. Or
that's true.
pizza pockets. I know they're horribly unhealthy, but man, I miss a good pizza pocket.
Oh.
They don't have any of this here, and you go to the store, you're like, you still need to cook yourself some food. There's no getting around having something really.
No, and I think that's the other thing in Europe. There's really not a lot of that fast food, quick,
Yeah.
convenient, throw in the microwave type food. You really got to make your own.
They're
Um,
starting, but it's still limited. It's like a small section, a very small section, versus like what I remember from the States, where you could go and you had everything in it. You really
right.
had everything that you wanted.
Yes, and then over there is it's different. And so I find it interesting that here in America that we're kind of trying to get back to that. And as a family, you have to make that decision. Hey, we're going to be more intentional about our food. We're going to be more intentional on how we prepare it, like cooking meals. It's an effort here to do
Oh yeah,
that. Whereas over there, it's like,
it's
what do
more
you mean?
normal.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
like we it's normal to take 2 hours to cook your dinner because
Yep.
it's dinner. Here,
Oh
it's
yeah.
kind of like we're trying to figure out how we can get it down to 30 minutes to 20 minutes to 10 minutes.
Yeah, but over in the States, a lot of people are working, which, I mean, of course, you don't want to be working 8 hours plus, come home, still cook a whole meal, and then find some me time and kids time. I mean, there's only 24 hours in a day, and you need to sleep sometime too.
Yeah, that part. Hold on. Amy said, I remember going to the store in Canada when my dad used to live there, and it was so different as far as what they had to offer. Yes. And you don't have a lot of long shelf lives. Um,
No.
you don't have a lot of just different things that they call preservatives here. You don't have a lot of that over there.
Yeah, that's one thing I've noticed. Like chocolates, there's barely anything. It's what is supposed to be in it, plus a little bit to make it live. But most of our stuff, like chocolates, only have a few weeks, depending on which chocolate you get. Yogurts, a week or two, maybe. I mean, you can still eat them past the date. The date doesn't mean that they're bad, but it's not as long as some things you think, how can that be several months? I mean, how does that work in or no, it's a few weeks on some things, few days on other things. So but
Yeah.
I've noticed that like the bread here has nothing in it except for what bread technically should have in it. You have your wheat, your flour, whatever, water, butter if it's in it. They try to reduce the sugar because you don't really need the sugar in it. It's
Yeah.
just to speed up the process basically.
Yeah, and I think too logically, and this is a good thing for even us to research as moms. And is there any moms out there, and you're willing to do the research? Please let us moms know what is normal shelf life of things. Because I remember growing up over there, you go to the bakery, you get your brochin, you get
Yep.
your whatever your long bread, and you got about 2 3 days, and that thing gonna be rock hard.
Exactly, but it's not rotting. You can still eat it, but it's
Yeah.
hard. I mean, you can really knock somebody out with that bread.
Yes. And then you have a few more days and then you get to, the rotten part. So for me to get
Exactly.
a loaf of bread for a week, it still be soft, and 2 weeks it's still not moldy. It kind of makes me a little bit
It's
nervous.
shocked. Yeah.
Thing when I think about cheese, how long is it normal for cheese to be? And just to give anybody a tip, what I recently started doing was, um, like your shredded cheese.
Yep.
They put a chemical in there in order to
Yeah.
keep them separate.
Separated cornstarch as well. If you're lucky, it's only cornstarch.
Yes.
Yep.
Normally, I forgot what the name of it is. So I started buying block cheese and shredding it
That's what we
ourselves.
do as well.
Yeah. And so I'm like, granted, oh my God, that takes 5 extra minutes, but that really makes a difference in what I'm
Oh,
giving my
definitely.
children.
See, what we do is we buy the block cheese, and we know we're going to eat through it anyway. So we just grate the whole one, all of
Mhm.
it, into a bowl. Have it. We mix two different colors, the white cheddar and the yellow cheddar or something, and we mix it together and we have it there. It lasts because if it doesn't have those chemicals on it, cheese actually lasts a good long time. But the
Okay.
chemicals actually on the cheese, I've noticed if I buy the shredded cheese, it's moldy after 2 3 days. Whereas if I shred my own, I can have it in there forever, really, and then it's still not moldy. So whatever chemical they use must be a whole money making thing because your cheese goes moldy super fast.
Oh my gosh, girl. And that's one thing Amy said, like it's about business. It's about
Oh,
they don't
yeah, of
mind
course.
sacrificing people. And you guys, and that's something I've noticed all countries do, on some level,
Of
they
course.
don't mind sacrificing the people for the greater good. Um, but it's incumbent upon us as parents and for our own self, um, to incorporate those things. And you said one thing that was very interesting. You said it's hard sometimes to find that me, right?
Definitely.
What I started to do here, and I don't know, maybe it's something we can, dive into at another time, but I was thinking sometimes I feel like it's like in our brain that our me time has to be separate from our family, but there are ways to have our me time while still mothering, while still wifing.
Yep.
Um, and what we eat is a good example, right? Like part of my me time is taking care of myself, my body. And
It's good.
so what I'm eating and feeding myself, that's what I'm feeding my family. And so if I'm taking care of myself, it's only going to pour down
Yeah.
to them.
That's good.
So hopefully, look, I'm telling you, hopefully you can find that moment. You know what I mean? Because it's a lot. It's a lot. And so before I let you go, I do want to ask you a few questions regarding the
Of course.
government. and the
Mhm.
support of mothers and families. You had mentioned that you guys have free healthcare over there.
That's correct. It's almost free, let's put it that way. So if you don't qualify for what it's called a medical card, it's depending on your income. And
Uh-huh.
luckily or unluckily, during COVID, my husband was made redundant. So we qualified eventually for the medical card. So we get free healthcare, completely free healthcare. But unfortunately, September is here soon and we're losing it. And then that means if you go to the GP, you have to pay 60 euros. If it's for a repeat visit, you don't have to pay anything.
Okay.
But otherwise, it's 60 euros. It's if he refers you to the hospital, hospital's free.
Okay.
As long as your GP refers you to anything further, the government then completely pays it. So
Okay.
there's a small fee, but if you have a good GP, which most of them are, they don't even expect you to pay most of the time.
Okay.
So you can just pay whenever you want to, kind of thing. But 60 euros is still easier here and there once in a while because you don't go every 5 minutes
Yeah.
versus the 1800 that we paid a month in the States on health insurance and then still had a copay.
Yeah. And deductible.
Yes. So I rather pay the 60, even though they sound harsh at once because they come out randomly because you don't know when you're going to be sick, but they're
Yeah.
still easier.
Yeah, to manage.
Oh,
So
yeah.
how was it when you were pregnant and you gave birth? How was that experience?
Scotland and Ireland are pretty much the same when it comes to it.
Mm.
So with Sophia, it was during COVID. So that was a completely different experience, but still it was the same, except for wearing a mask. And my husband couldn't come with us to the hospital. So it was just me in there, which was nice because it was more seating for all of us. It was calmer. Nobody was there to annoy you, really. And you had me time sitting in the waiting room. It was great. And we weren't allowed to travel far from our house, but our hospital is quite far from the house. So I definitely used that excuse to take my mom out for lunch because we're like, if the police stopped you, you had to have a good reason. And I'm like, well, I'm going to the hospital. And then
Yes.
we just stayed in town the whole time. But
Okay.
going to so first when you find out you're pregnant, you call your GP. They don't even confirm it basically. All they do is write a letter to the hospital saying, oh, can you please take her in as your patient, blah blah blah. And they're not going to say no because they have to take you.
Mhm.
Then you go in whenever they have an available slot to see you, check you in, give you all your documents. For me, I think that kind of got lost in the whole COVID process. So I had to call them up. I had my first ultrasound before I actually had seen a midwife. You don't see a doctor here unless you have medical reasons.
Okay. Otherwise,
They
it's
only do midwife. And so I had my scan, and then a few weeks later, I had my midwife appointment. They put me in, and then you have the option. If you're low risk, you can go to a local midwife, or you can stay at the hospital. So it's up to you. Hospital is nicer because it's in the big city. You enjoy. You go if you're paying for parking, you might as well enjoy the whole day
yeah.
there anyway. And then you see them every what was it 2 months at the beginning, and then the closer you get, the more you see them. You only get one scan from the hospital. If you want more, you have to go private. They
Okay.
believe the scanning isn't that healthy for the child, so the less you have to interfere with the pregnancy, the better on your body.
Okay.
They say your body knows what it needs to do. Um, so, um,
Baby attack.
baby attack.
Oh.
Yeah. Hey. Um, so which I like because I mean the body does know what it needs to do. You get checked. If there's anything, then you get the extra help that you need. With Sophia, she must have been hiding all her fluids, so they were concerned. So they got me in more often. So I did have more scans, and she was just probably drinking all the fluid every time I had a scan. So they're like, "Oh my god, she's all dried out," in their face. And then they found her little kidneys, and they were all full of everything. So everything was okay. And I
Okay.
did have a C-section because I had a C-section with Victoria, and I chose a C-section for her.
Okay.
Um, and they gave you an appointment about 2 weeks ahead of time. And then you just go in and you wait until it's your turn. You have a shared room. There's no private rooms. Even if you have medical insurance, you actually pay to go see the hospital. If you have no insurance, you don't pay anything. So I'm like, why would you
Insurance.
ever do it? And there was no guarantee you get a private room anyway with with the insurance or not. So might as well. We were 4 people in the room because we were all C-section patients.
Okay.
Yes, 4 in the room. Yes, and so it was nice. You don't really sleep anyway the first few days after having a baby, so it doesn't really make a difference.
Nice.
And my husband could only come for an hour a day to visit during COVID.
Mommy,
But
yes,
with
mommy, yes.
yes, thank you. But with Victoria in Scotland, he could come and visit all day long, basically. It's a big difference. And we were only in for 2 days. I wanted to go out after one day, but they said, "Oh no, you need to stay in 2 days." It's it. But I never had pain after the C-section, and they never believed me. They're like, "No, you need to have pain." I'm like, "No," and I still can't feel anything on my scar.
What?
It's completely numb. So I
That-
guess it's a good thing at times. But
yeah, but if
Careful, baby.
something was wrong,
Oh,
like
you.
good. And
You
one
be
thing,
careful.
I love it. She's so cute. I love that you say
Mommy.
your Ireland and Scotland are encouraging your body
Oh.
to do what it does.
Yes.
So
They
I
even
think
do home pregnancies. If you want to have a home pregnancy, that's absolutely no problem. Your midwife will set everything up for you. And then, of course, they have the doulas here now, too, and everything. But it's basically let your body do what it needs to do.
Mommy,
Yes.
mommy,
You want to go at me, huh? Yes, we'll go soon. Tomorrow? Okay.
I love that's a good cue to wrap up. But I do want to share with the people like a few things that you said to me that I thought was awesome. So, Jacqueline, can you tell the people how many languages do you speak?
I speak 2 languages, German and English, of course. I'm practicing my Italian because I fell in love with Italy when we went. So I'm working hard on learning that. And my kids hopefully will learn a little more languages, Bulgarian because my husband is Bulgarian. So, but that's a hard language. Very
Yeah,
hard.
a lot of the languages over there are you would think that they will be very similar, but some like
That's
even
true,
though they
yeah.
touch, it's like what?
It's completely different. I mean, whoa, that is a hard one here.
Yes. And then you had mentioned earlier that though there is Irish, the
That's
language,
correct.
they speak predominantly English.
They speak English. Irish was pretty much banned when the UK was ruling over Ireland, and in 1922 they actually got their independence. So since then they're trying to revive a dead language, basically. So
Okay.
when you go out into the villages and stuff like that, you'll hear people talking Irish now. But it's and the young ones don't really want to learn it because they don't see the point of learning it because English is still more important than Irish. I mean, just to put it, it'll get you further than Irish.
That is true. And in Scotland, it's English too, right?
It's English, but they also speak Gaelic, but also very rare. Gaelic is the same as Irish, basically. They just call it Gaelic,
Yeah.
but that's only a very, very small amount.
Okay. And I know many other countries, though they have their predominant language, like German,
Yep.
Germany, most people speak German, but also speak English.
They have a base knowledge, at least, of the language.
Yeah, you can
They learn it in school, but also nowadays, everything has English in it. All the commercials have English in it. There's McDonald's, and everything in McDonald's, no
Yes.
matter where you are, will always be in English. So
Yes.
they know some words, and it just creeps into the language now. But they still prefer their main language. Yes, it's you. Where you're hiding. Yeah.
And I love that. And I wanted to highlight that
Tata.
because I think sometimes people feel intimidated to go overseas. What if they don't speak my language? What if I don't figure it out? They're much more accommodating than you might think. And then a lot of countries speak
Yep.
English. And they're used to Americans. And a lot of them
Yes.
like Americans and they like our music, our clothing. I mean,
Oh yeah.
yeah, because I remember even us growing up in Germany, like they would love our dark skin, our hair.
Exactly. We were cool back then.
Exactly. Like, rap? Rap? Can you rap? Like, no, I'm just regular.
Yep.
You know what I mean? But
Yep.
so that's
No, but even if you try the language, I mean, like I have a free app that I've downloaded and I use just to try. And when we would travel to Italy, even if you just try two little words and the rest in English, don't be scared of at least attempting, because
Yes.
they appreciate if you try. There's no harm in trying. They won't laugh at you. I mean, your
Yes.
partner might laugh at you, but they won't laugh at you.
Yes, and they love it because at least you're trying. Because I think sometimes
Exactly.
we get this stigma that Americans are just stuck in our ways and we
That's
want
correct.
this, and so for us to try goes a long way with
Yeah.
other countries. And then the other thing that I wanted to highlight too, a lot of times when you travel, it's expensive to get to that country or to get to Europe. But once you're there, you can travel amongst the different
Pretty
countries.
easy. Yeah.
What was the round trip that you said it generally costs?
Ryanair, which is the pretty much the cheapest airline here, they certain times depends on, you just have to look every day pretty much. They
Mhm.
fly from like Dublin to, where did we fly to? Bucharest in Romania for a round trip, like what was it, 50 euros round trip, which is again 50 $55 round trip. It's great. It's a nearly 4 hour flight. You're
Good.
traveling far, 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 but hey, for 50 euros, you can't beat it. Going to London, I pay sometimes round trip 20 euros.
Yep.
So you can't hurt. Hotels, unfortunately, are getting more expensive now with everything, electricity going up and all of that. But your flights are still cheap, so you can balance it out if you plan ahead.
Yes. So get over there and then you could travel.
Definitely. Yep.
And one thing too is when you're traveling with children, I think sometimes too people get that anxiety of the stress or what if something happens, somebody wants to snatch my kid and things of that nature. Correct me if I'm wrong. I know when
Mhm.
we were growing up, that wasn't a real big anxiety. Is that something that
Yeah.
you get anxious about traveling with your children? Their
Not
safety?
at all. I mean, you have it in your back mind just to make sure that your children are with you and they don't run far away, but that you have that everywhere where you go. There's no big deal of, oh, they're going to be kidnapped or snatched, or no. That maybe if I go, what we think of like Africa, if you go down there, you have that thought, yes, but not when you travel within Europe. They are very child friendly and they support you with your children versus look at you like, oh, you have children with you.
Yes,
um
how inconvenient.
there's some places that look at you like, oh God, you brought your children, how could you? Yes, no, they like children and they respect you actually more if you have your kids with you than if you're just on your own. I've noticed that in a lot of places that you get more benefits with kids than without.
That is true. That is true. And then the last thing I wanted to highlight too, because one thing that's very popular now over here is homeschooling. And I know you homeschool, and I
Yes.
know many people that live overseas homeschool. And so I just wanted to put a nugget out there. If you're homeschooling, though it might seem strange and you're harming your kids here in America, to remind us as moms, doing the best for your family, your children, is doing the best based off of you. Don't always necessarily
Correct.
look around you for that um, affirmation or that good job. But remember, there's other countries where that's the norm.
Oh
Like
yeah, like it's become here more and more the norm, especially with COVID. I mean, unfortunately, there's countries that are completely against it, like
mhm,
Germany, for example. It's
yeah,
completely banned over there. Why? No idea. That's why so many Germans are now actually coming to Ireland, because Ireland is completely free on how you want to homeschool. So you just email them with your paperwork, say I want to homeschool. Eventually, they'll come and do an assessment and put you on the list, and then that's it. You do whatever you want to do. You have to provide a minimum education. There's no definition of what a minimum education is, so they can't really ding you on whatever you do. It's good if you have some pride in what you want to do with your kids. We
yeah,
want our kids to still have a time schedule. We want them to know that you have to stick to the time, because when you're an adult, I mean, they won't let you
yes,
do whatever you want to do, and they want to go maybe to university, so we still have that in our mindset that we can't just do what we want them to, or
yeah,
let them do what they want. They know we are still there to push them in a certain direction to an extent.
yeah, like a baseline. 'Cause
Yeah.
I think some people think homeschooling is a free for all. It's like you still got to prepare them for university or whatever career that they're going to do.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
so
definitely.
I really appreciated that. And that's one thing that me and Jacqueline connected on was like the homeschooling aspect
Yeah.
because it could cause a lot of anxiety in any country because it's something that oftentimes we never did as kids, and so now we're kind of taking that role. And so I just pray that people feel encouraged. Make your family your own and
Hold
go
on a
with
second. Yes, you can have the
it.
soap in a minute.
That's it. I'll go ahead and let you go. Thank you so much, and thank your babies for
Oh,
allowing this
no.
time with me.
Yep. Yep, it's definitely time now.
Yeah, yeah, I know that warning. All right, well, you guys, I pray you guys have a wonderful day on purpose
Thank you.
to the conversations, and we'll be with you guys again soon.
Yep,
All
take
right,
care.
bye.
Bye.
You.
Thank you. Bye.
All right. Hey.
Bye.
Bye, baby.
Bye.